colors, as we see them, are not merely light. Color is a conscious event resulting from the interplay between the observer and the observed. The French post-impressionist artist Paul Cézanne wrote that color is the place where our brain and the universe meet. So what do philosophers make of all this? Well, there's a number of different takes people have, but in this video I'll be discussing two theories that I think capture the ancient disagreement between Newton and Goethe. Let's start with the Newton side of things, and one of the most famous distinctions in all of philosophy, John Locke's primary and secondary qualities. Primary qualities are the properties of things as they are in the world, independent of our perception. Take a basketball, for example. The fact that the basketball is spherical is an inherent property of that object, and does not depend on an observer seeing it that way. Then there are secondary qualities, the stuff that depends on the observer, like smell, taste, sound, and, of course, color. The basketball being orange and the sound it makes when you bounce it are each secondary qualities. Objects don't exactly have colors in this way, but they have dispositional properties to give rise to colors. The basketball is not orange itself, but exists in such a way that it appears orange to an observer when they look at it under the right conditions. Some people call this a received view of color, since the properties of the object result in the observer receiving that sense experience. On the other side of things, we have a take that's more in the spirit of Goethe. Evan Thompson, J.J. Gibson, and some others put forward what's known as an action-based ecological theory of color. On first glance, it seems pretty similar to the received view. They still don't consider colors intrinsic properties of things in the world, independent of any perceiver. It depends in part on the perception of the color itself. Color is a relational property, connecting the environment with the perceiving animal. But this view also wants to emphasize the fact that at the end of the day, we're still basically animals. He who understands the baboon would do more for metaphysics than Locke. That quote is from none other than Charles Darwin. Biologists will always tell us that an organism can't be understood in isolation, apart from the world. And in the same way, that organism's environment, or niche, can't be understood apart from the organism. In fact, the animal and its environment are connected in a much deeper way than you might expect. An organism finds itself in an environment, but they don't just hang out there. They interact with their surroundings, based on the physical signals the environment gives them. Through this, they transform the environment, and simultaneously, the environment itself transforms the organism by defining what traits are selected evolutionarily. The organism and the environment co-determine each other. This co-determinacy is a bit of a problem for people like Locke and Newton. For them, perception involves representing items of sense data, which are the immediate objects of perception. These representations stand in for some physical object in the external world. So we aren't actually looking out at the world, we're looking through our representations. This view treats the animal and its environment as separate systems, rather than two components of one system. In the ecological approach to visual perception, Gibson expresses some issues with this take. As animals, our perception is always guided. Perception and action evolve together and are inseparable. Our perception guides the activity in our motor system, and our motor system guides perception. For Gibson, environments have particular relational properties called affordances, things that give us an opportunity to interact with them. Trees, in relation to certain animals, afford climbing. They can be described as climb-upable. The other side of the coin is affectivities, the properties of animals that allow an opportunity for interaction with the environment. Lizards and monkeys can climb things, so they possess the affectivity climbing thing. These kinds of properties are really weird, since they're almost objective and subjective at the same time. It's both a fact of the environment and a fact of behavior. It's both physical and psychological. Gibson ultimately wants to say that the colors we see have lawful correlations with particular ecological properties like affordances. So what's even the difference here with the Lockean or the Newtonian view? They both agree that color depends on the observer, and can't be understood as intrinsic properties of the world, independent of our perception. Neuroscience can model the features of color as we perceive them, so it might be tempting to conclude that object color is really just an illusion, and we can reduce it to neural states in the visual system. But Thompson and Gibson want to avoid this. Instead of situating color exclusively in the brain, they want to take into account the relation with the environment. Instead of color being a dispositional property on the physical level, it's on the ecological level. This view is naturalistic, in that it strives to be in harmony with visual science, but that doesn't mean it wants to reduce animals like humans to collections of neural activity in physical processes. the perceiver is treated as an active exploring animal, rather than a disembodied spectator who just takes the colors in. Colors are connected with affordances and effectivities, especially in their roles as categories and signals to us to satisfy our adaptive ecological needs. They reveal what the environment can do to us and what we can do to the environment. It's also worth noting that the colors we see are not the same colors that other animals see. I mentioned earlier that humans have 3 types of cone cells in the eye that process color, which makes us trichromats. But this is not the norm. Animals like squirrels, rabbits, some species of fish, and possibly cats and dogs only have 2. Goldfish and turtles have 4, and pigeons and ducks might even have 5. Even within these categories, there's variation. Humans and honeybees are both trichromats, but the colors the honeybee sees is shifted towards the ultraviolet. So why is this a thing? Well, colors aren't just pretty. They help us identify objects in the world by allowing us to segment visual scenes. And they also give us clues about the objects in the scene. It can show us how ripe a fruit is, or how hydrated a plant is. This leads us to Evan Thompson's argument from perceiver relativity. Color vision helps us split up the visual scene into regions of distinct surfaces or objects. Color vision varies considerably throughout the animal world. Therefore, the way we split up a scene is also likely to vary throughout the animal world. Therefore, what counts as a surface in visual perception depends on the perceiver. All of this makes sense when you consider evolutionary adaptation. Consider deep-sea fish, for example. When you're that far down in the ocean, things are pretty dark. These creepy little guys are usually monochromats, meaning that they only see the intensity of light, but no color. A lot of them hunt their prey from below, so their light perception is tuned to be sensitive to the maximum contrast to detect movement in their prey. The further up in the ocean you go, where there is much more light around, fish have much more variety in the colors they're able to perceive. Now what about us humans? Since the 1950s, some people have suggested that the way primate perception is configured actually co-evolved with colored fruits, and recent studies support this view too. Species of monkeys like macaques, patas monkeys, and guanons all have similar sensitivities in mid-wave pigment and long-wave pigment. They all look very different and live in very different habitats, but they also all eat a lot of fruit. These fruits, conveniently, tend to be very brightly colored and stand out in the green foliage. Now, why would these fruits be such that they're easy for monkeys to spot? This is obviously great for the monkeys, but it's also in the fruit's best interest. The monkeys pick and eat the fruit, often spitting out the large seeds far away. They also swallow the smaller seeds and excrete them out later, likely much further away. This allows the fruit species to spread far and wide throughout the environment, so it's evolutionarily adaptive for them to look brightly colored for the monkeys, since the monkeys are doing them a solid. The animal and the environment co-determine each other. On an evolutionary timescale, it becomes clear that the colors an animal perceives are not arbitrary. They depend on the participatory relationship between the animal and their environment. The associations we have with colors reveal this harmony between us and the world. Thanks for watching.